Welcome to Shaped by the Stars, Your Chart, Your Stories. I'm your host Tara, Virgo Rising, Leo Sun, Scorpio Moon, an astrologer and guide for those navigating life's big turning points. I share astrology in a way that's grounded, relatable, and rooted in real life. Each episode I sit down with everyday people to talk about their real stories, the highs, the lows, and turning points, reflecting on how those moments connect to the energy of their chart. Because when you start to see yourself in your chart, things begin to make sense. You realise you're not broken, you're becoming. This podcast is about finding yourself in the thick of it, through honest stories, open hearts, and the insights astrology brings to real life. Let's get into it.
To really embrace life, we need to embrace the fact that we're going to die, like really come close to that death aspect of all that is not really us as well. To treasure this human experience, to treasure the simple moments, because we only get this short little life to do it.
In today's episode, I'm so excited to introduce you to someone whose work speaks straight to the heart of conscious motherhood, healing, and quiet revolution. Vanessa is a Libra Rising, Capricorn Sun, and Virgo Moon. She's a writer, somatic therapist, and mentor who supports mothers to unlearn, return, and begin again. Her work is a sanctuary for those standing at the edge, mothers who feel the weight of the world, yet still choose to lead with heart. She writes and speaks for the chain breakers, those questioning familial and cultural norms, letting go of what no longer fits, and gently reclaiming what is sacred. Through her poetic essays and grounded guidance, Vanessa invites us into a slower, more human, heart-led way of living. She explores motherhood, not as a performance, but as a living, breathing practice, rooted in presence, intuition, and deep care. From unschooling and peaceful parenting to trauma, embodiment, and feminine wisdom, Vanessa weaves a tapestry of insight for those seeking something more soulful and circular. If you've ever felt the pull to live differently, to raise your children outside of a broken system, or to come home to the body and the earth's rhythms, this conversation is for you. Welcome to the very first episode of Shaped by the Stars, Your Chart, Your Story. I'm so excited you're here. Today's episode is really special because I'm sitting down with someone who's been a huge part of my own journey, my friend Vanessa.
Yay! I'm so excited to be here. I can't wait to get stuck in. This is my pleasure, my honour, definitely, to be here and receive your beautiful wisdom.
Okay, so before we get into the chart, I'm curious, what's your personal relationship with astrology?
I've always been interested in astrology, always found it helpful, but at the same time, I always felt like I wasn't what was portrayed by the general consensus of what my son's Capricorn was like. So then I knew, okay, it's also to do with your moon and your rising and all of that stuff. But my understanding was still pretty basic. I was into it and I was interested in it, but there was always this sense of it doesn't really portray me exactly as I think I am. And it wasn't until I met you and you started sharing, did you know this about astrology? Did you know this? And did you know this? That I started to realize like my chart is actually accurately portraying who I am. It's just that I didn't know enough. I hadn't gone deep enough to understand all the different things that can play out. That's why I tend to tell people, especially mums, getting to know your kids' charts can be so helpful in understanding the child in front of you and understanding the unique dynamics that are going on. It can be a game changer when we understand not only ourselves, but also the people around us a little better.
100%. I absolutely love looking at kids' moon signs because it tells us so much about what they're into, how they can feel emotionally supported, what they need to feel safe, secure, and nurtured in the world. I love it for kids. So looking at your chart, I notice a strong presence of both cardinal and mutable energy. The cardinal signs Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn each begin a new season, carrying the promise of fresh starts and new momentum. This energy is all about new beginnings, taking action, and beginning new cycles. On top of that, you also have a lot of mutable energy, particularly in the sign of Virgo. This brings adaptability, and at its core, mutable energy, especially in Virgo, is about noticing what isn't working, finding ways to fix, refine, and improve it, and ultimately being of service to others. I know this energy has had a strong impact in your life. How do you navigate the balance between your drive to start new things and your need to constantly refine or improve them?
I don't know if manage is the right word. I don't even know if I do manage it. Constant work in progress. No. I think I've had to tap into a little bit more of, I guess, Capricorn side of me. So the side of me that would be a bit strict, structured, or stern, or putting strong boundaries, I'm like, F that. Let's get wild and let's like be free and no boundaries and not no boundaries, but you know what I mean? No hierarchy, no routine. But actually, I've had to learn to lean into that, especially as I'm getting older, like really seeing that it's not conducive to my health, well-being, or the people's around me, or my work in the world to be in this constant state of starting things and so much passion for things and then just leaving them, halfway through or three-quarters of the way through without finishing and tying up those loose ends because it's just, not helpful for especially my work to just leave things dangling like that. So I've really had to kind of lean into the Capricorn part of me, be a little bit stern with myself, hold a strong boundary for myself, hold a deadline for myself. I'm really good at starting following creative impulse and getting really inspired by a multitude of things, but it's holding that energy all the way through. That's really the challenge for me.
The cardinal energy in your chart ties in beautifully with your Libra rising, which is a cardinal sign, but you also have Pluto in your first house. New beginnings, major transformations, and powerful rebirths are core themes in your life. You came into this lifetime ready to evolve, to initiate change, and to grow through deep personal shifts. But before we get into the Pluto energy, I want to talk about your Libra rising. Libra was the sign rising on the eastern horizon at the moment of your birth, suggesting you're here to explore and embody Libra's energy. The rising sign or ascendant marks the beginning of the first house, the house of self. It speaks to your physical presence, personality, and how you move through the world. As an air sign, Libra brings intellect, charm, creativity, and a strong focus on relationships. Symbolized by the scales, it seeks balance, harmony, and fairness, often taking time to weigh every angle. Libra rising individuals are natural diplomats, thoughtful, refined, and socially attuned. As a Libra rising, these qualities aren't just traits, they're part of your soul's mission. And with this sign landing in your first house, your path is deeply connected to your bodily experience, learning to bring balance, peace, and harmony back to the self, but to also look good while doing it. When you first learnt about your rising sign, did it feel true for you? And how do you feel it shows up in your everyday life?
Honestly, again, like when you say it, when you go into more depth like that, it feels so much more resonant. But look, it definitely, even just reading the basic little description of Libra, I definitely relate more with that. And maybe that also explains why I felt more connected even with that than, say, the Capricorn Sun, because it is more the persona as well that you put out in the world. But I love that you say it's not just a persona, it's actually a deep soul calling. The first thing that came to my mind when you were saying those things is growing up in my family, I was always the thread that tied everyone together, both on a very physical level. So I was the only child, and then my parents divorced and they both remarried, and I was the link between the two families, the thread that tied us all together, all the siblings. I was the oldest, and I was always the one that people would come to with their problems to get the most balanced response. I'd be the mediator between my parents and my siblings. That's definitely been a huge theme in my life and probably a constant even within myself, trying to find balance, that peace. And I love the bit about looking good while doing it because let's be honest here, I definitely have that vain aspect of like caring about the way I look and wanting to present a level of what I consider beauty, but also I love beautiful things in my home, and beauty inspires me, and even just the beauty of nature really inspires me. It makes me feel just like in awe of life. I love beauty.
You have Pluto, the planet of transformation, death, and rebirth, sitting in your first house. When we have a planet in our first house, especially a planet as powerful as Pluto, this tells us that Pluto is a big part of your personal evolution and core to your life journey. You were born to experience deep inner transformation, to shed old layers of identity, and to rise again and again, evolving and changing your identity. You're here to reshape not only yourself, but others too. You carry the energy of a natural healer, a guide, a powerful counselor, someone who empowers others through truth, presence, and lived experience. Your wisdom doesn't come from theory, it comes from lived experiences, walking through the fire, doing the work, and emerging stronger each time. Before we get into some Pluto stories, can you please tell me about your tattoo and what it actually says? Because I've always known that you have a tattoo, but I never actually learned what it said until we were speaking yesterday. So, can you please tell everyone all about your tattoo?
It's basically in a figure eight, right? So it's writing in an infinity sign, essentially. That's why I did it in that figure eight infinity sign. And it says, to breathe life, I must first kiss death.
Such a Pluto statement. When you told me this yesterday, I was like, oh my God, Vanessa, that's Pluto.
The way I got it done was probably very Pluto too. Like, so my two kids were still very little. I didn't have my third yet. I was just in the city and I was driving somewhere. I'd had the tattoo in my mind for quite a while. And I just pulled over by the side of the road and went straight into the tattoo parlor and just said, I really want to get this done. Can you do this for me now? And they're like, yep, okay. I didn't even care about what kind of script or style of writing. I just wanted it done. I wanted it on my forearm, somewhere where I could look at it every day as a reminder. To really embrace life, we need to embrace the fact that we're going to die, like really come close to that death aspect of all that is not really us as well, to treasure this human experience, to treasure the simple moments, because we only get this short little life to do it.
I always think of Pluto, and you say it quite often as the edge walker.
Yes. I mean, I consider myself definitely an edge walker, bit of misfit, a little bit of a dreamer, kind of outcast almost. That energy lives deeply inside me, and I know it's not necessarily true, and you might not actually see that if you are looking at me from the outside. Sometimes I can be a bit eccentric or bohemian style with maybe some of the clothing I wear, but it's not always either. Maybe because of the Libra, I have a little bit of charm, so I don't seem like a weirdo on the edge, like outcast, but that's how I feel inside. Community's never been a huge part of my life. I've always kind of been on the edge of community looking in. When we talk about being in my family, I'm the only one from my mum and my dad. I'm like the thread between all the other families. I just always feel like I'm on the edge. I've learned to embrace that as a real gift because it's given me that visionary capacity. As someone on the edge, you can kind of see beyond the edge what maybe others can't see, and you can also see what's happening within the circles, and that's a big part of my work, being able to see maybe the places that need change.
Pluto energy runs deep. It's all about getting beneath the surface and tapping into what's hidden or unseen. There's this powerful undercurrent that's not always obvious, but it's definitely there. With Libra ruling your first house and Pluto sitting right there too, you have the ability to connect with people on a deep level, especially when they're going through intense or challenging times. What's really beautiful is how Libra softens Pluto's intensity. You're able to walk with people to the edge, diving deep and doing that powerful transformative work, but you bring a gentleness to it. It's like holding space in a way that feels safe even when it's raw and real. Whenever I'm in a crisis, you're the first person I want to talk to. You have this natural ability to counsel, to mediate, and to meet people in their emotional depths. That's the power of Pluto. People with strong Pluto energy often know crisis firsthand, and because of that, they can walk others through it with strength and compassion. Can you share with us some big transformative Pluto experiences?
I feel like my whole life has been like that. Now that I'm getting older, a lot of these themes are kind of evening out a little bit, and I'm able to really almost mine them for the gold and for the wisdom. Whereas the first half of my life was probably a lot of these intense transformative, like, like I'm talking my business burning down in a fire. and having to start from scratch. That actually happened, you know, like intense. And it was not just one thing, it was thing after thing after thing after thing. And especially for a particular period of time, I would say from when Saturn did its first return onwards, that was probably when it started again in my adult life. But in my childhood, oh my God, I mean, my parents divorced when I was 3, and I know that can be quite common, but you know, that's a start as well, and even early on, my first experience with my mum was there was a lot of rejection there, so it just feels like there's just constant being put into the depths of feeling and pain and intensity and loss and having to start again. We literally were homeless, and luckily we have family and friends, and so we weren't actually on the streets, but we had to start from ground zero. And then my kids through that early phase having broken bones multiple times, and then my oldest son going through a, you know, like a glass wall window and getting completely cut up, like all of these things happening, moving house constantly, like constantly starting fresh. But in the last, you know, 6 years, we've been in one spot, or 5 years, I think it's been, which is unheard of for us, me and my family. It's been every year and a half we've moved. So it feels like that late blooming of settling, grounding, really being in one spot and being able to sink in deep to all the wisdom gained from all that intensity is now coming through.
Yes, when you have Pluto in the first house, there's a lot of what you just described: deep intensity and repeated moments of rebirth. Pluto is associated with the phoenix rising from the ashes, tearing it all down and starting from scratch. With Pluto in the first, who you are at the beginning of life can look completely different to who you become later on. It's a placement that brings many transformative experiences, each one reshaping and refining your identity. Transitioning now to the first house Lord. The first house Lord shows us where our energy is naturally directed, the life themes that shape our identity and self expression. It reveals where a lot of our focus and drive tend to go. Your first house Lord is Venus, and she sits in the fifth house in the sign of Aquarius. The fifth house is the house of creativity and self expression: children, parenting styles, romance, pleasure, joy, passion, and playfulness. With Venus in Aquarius in your fifth house, you're here to express your creativity in a way that's truly unique and progressive. There's a strong drive to do things differently, whether that's through innovation, artistic expression, or simply being yourself, all while creating more peace and harmony. Venus here makes you naturally gifted when it comes to all things creative, art, beauty, fashion. So I'd love to hear about how fashion, art, and creating beauty have shown up in your life, especially in ways that feel uniquely you.
I mean, me and my husband met in the fashion industry. So we were both in the fashion industry for a long period of time. I thought I wanted to be a fashion designer when I first finished school. I applied to do TAFE kind of course in fashion, but then I never went. I was too busy having a good time and exploring. And then I went traveling around the world
That
instead.
there can happen with a fifth house. The fifth house is all about partying.
I mean, I was a party for 5 days straight and then sleep for 2 days on the weekend. It was intense partying when I left school for a couple of years, and then I went traveling around the world and then found a whole 'nother part of myself, which was healing and yoga and, tantric practice. I just went deep in my spirituality, just kind of, broke open, and that was when I was quite young, really. I was probably 20, which set me on a whole 'nother path, but fashion was still like a backdrop. So I'd been working in fashion, and when I came back after traveling around the world back to Melbourne, I went back into the fashion industry as a default because that's what I did, and that's when I met my husband. We worked in the fashion industry for years, but at the same time, I'd had this experience overseas that had completely transformed my identity, transformed my idea of just wanting to party, and it just wasn't there. Like, I mean, it was still there. That's a lie, because I still spent the next 5 years until I had kids, like, partying hard, but it was a different kind of partying. There was still lots of those parties, but there was constantly this gnawing, nagging kind of feeling to go back to the things that I found when I was traveling, which was deep spiritual practice, deep spiritual inquiry, deep understanding of what it means to be human and how to live well. There was just this constant gnawing of there's more to this life. What are you doing? Going out and drinking or drugging or partying and being cool, like, this is all just fake. And but there was a part of me that still loved being in that environment because I loved beauty. I loved being able to be fashionable. I loved being able to get that attention for that. But there was still this gnawing of needing to do something else. That kind of changed once I had kids. I did go back and study yoga when I came back to Melbourne as well. So I had these two worlds that I was like navigating, the spiritual and then the like party fashion girl. How do I make peace with that? So that was a point of friction for a really long time actually.
You have a strong 12th house, which is about spirituality, and your 12th house is actually connected to the 5th. Party, play, fun, joy. The 5th house is the house of celebrity, and I'm sure you probably met a lot of celebrities in the Melbourne fashion scene. Is that true?
Well, I mean, to a degree, definitely. I mean, I think we were just also in our own egos thinking we
Yeah.
were the celebrities, to be honest. We're like, we're the cool kids.
That's so fifth house. I love that. But what really stands out about your first house lord in the fifth is how beautifully this ties into your approach to your parenting style and radical unschooling. So the fifth house rules children. And with Venus here, there's a natural desire to bring balance, harmony, and love into the way you nurture and guide. Combining that with Aquarius, the sign of doing things differently and challenging the norm. And it creates the perfect foundation for a philosophy like radical unschooling. There's a deep trust in your child's innate curiosity, a belief in allowing space for individuality and freedom. And what's interesting is that as a Libra rising, your approach isn't forceful or rebellious in a typical Aquarian sense. Instead, you bring a more gentle, graceful energy. You're guided by harmony and fairness, which aligns beautifully with how you've chosen to raise your children in a way that honors both their uniqueness and creating more peace in the home. So, can you tell us what led you to discover radical unschooling and how it's shaped your journey and approach to your life and parenting?
It's interesting because when you're explaining that, I feel like I've evolved into the more gentle. I mean, I think that's always been a backdrop, but I think in my early years, I definitely pushed the rebel more. I definitely was like, trying to really be in that gritty rebel state. The high school students at my school when I was in year 9 and they were having their muck up day in year 12, they tattooed rebel without a cause across my forehead because I was known as the rebel without a cause, just but I was also always very likable, like, even my teachers, they would often like me even though I was disruptive and annoying, and they also hated me. Like, I was more kind of pushing towards that rebellious Aquarian energy, and I think I always actually related more with Aquarius whenever I was looking at what star signs are. I was like, "I feel more Aquarian. What's this bloody Capricorn bullshit? I'm not like that." I'm Aquarian. I was talking before about this push-pull between wanting to delve deep into spirituality and what that is, and the party girl. Once I had my first child and I was right at the end of doing my yoga studies. It was a 2-year program with a woman in Melbourne, and I had my baby right at the end, which was great because it gave me a direct experience of pregnancy yoga, which a lot of people don't get. So I got some prenatal training in my training. Most people need to go out and do extra training for that. So that then led to moving away from fashion because obviously I was looking after a new baby and wanting to go into having a yoga studio. But it was still this slow kind of moving towards that stuff, but still being connected with going to all the parties. We were still really young, like 26, 27. So it was these two worlds. And it wasn't until all of that other stuff happened, so that I was referring to earlier, like my business burning down or my husband losing his work, all of those things, that my parenting really started to shift into a different direction. Because of my experience in India with tantric philosophy, I finally found an outlet to practice as a neo tantric practitioner and body worker. And that was when my kids were little. So I started to get, more of a taste of that world as opposed to the fashion world. And that's kind of actually when me and my husband started having some real issues because he was in one world, I was going into another, and we just weren't quite getting each other. So That's when all the turmoil started. My tantric business burnt down in a blazing fire,
Which is
40-foot
so Pluto,
flames.
I just wanna add, Pluto
Oh my
is
god.
tantric.
Whenever I tell people, they're like, "Oh, it got a bit saucy in there, did it in your tantric temple space?" Because so much had happened in that big space of time, in those few years, there was a lot of trauma that we were all carrying. I knew a little bit about trauma and, it wasn't as much of a buzzword then. People were just starting to get an awareness of how it plays out. So I came across Marion Rose. She's a psychologist. She's got a PhD, so she's Dr. Marion Rose. She's online, you can find her. Beautiful woman, and she talks a lot about how emotions function. And through her work, I started understanding how trauma is released through emotion and how tantrums, raging, crying is all basically like therapy for kids. It's like a process of release. And because we've been through so much trauma, I started to understand how I could support my kids to release all of this stuff and also my own trauma from the experience, right? So I started really learning how to hold space for them, understanding how play worked. So this style of parenting is called aware parenting. So I went down the rabbit hole of aware parenting and really started to bring that through in the home. I had a real issue with screens. I was quite controlling in wanting to be the good parent. So no screens, no sugar, trying to monitor all of those things, whereas my husband was a bit looser and I'd always be like, "Why'd you get them this? And why are you letting them do this?" It's not I know the right way to mother. And because I was doing such a deep dive constantly in trauma, I was constantly learning about trauma, doing courses in trauma, understanding emotion, understanding child development. I was the general in terms of this is the right way. I know what to do and you need to follow my lead, basically. So my oldest was having an altercation with the screen, which I hate that term as a radical unschooler, which maybe we can talk about later. But back then I called it screen, and yeah, having an altercation because I didn't like the screens, never liked him on it. He was playing, and it was time to get off, and he looked at me and he said, I know, Mama, I'm bad because I like screens." And I remember that was the first seed for me to go, something's not right here. I don't want him to be internalizing this sense of being bad because he likes something, because
Mm.
he's interested in playing something that I'm thinking is harmful, bad, whatever. But I don't want him to be internalizing that as I'm bad. Then there was this moment where going to school every morning was just such a headache. My youngest was having meltdowns to get up early to go. My daughter was the only one that was kind of cruising through, but she was having issues with literacy. So they were starting to put a bit of pressure on. And my oldest son was just like, it just we were fighting all the time. It was like he'd spend the whole week at school in this funky mood and, oppositional towards us, like defiant. There was just this energy, and it would take the whole weekend for him to be back to what I felt like was more of a, relaxed and more of himself. And then he'd be back at school again and the same thing would happen. And we're like, what is going on? This is just exhausting. And then he finally asked to homeschool, and we were taken off guard, but we just said yes. And my daughter was like, "Well, I'll try it for a month and see if I like it." And the youngest wasn't at school. The oldest, once he'd been homeschooled for a year, he turned around and told me he'd been bullied at school for a period of time. Now, he looks back on that now and he thinks it's not that bad. But in the moment, it was. It was causing issues. And when I asked him, "Why didn't you tell me?" He said, "Oh, I did, and you just told me to tell him to stop. I don't like that." And he said, "I tried that. It didn't work." So then I just didn't say anything after that. The next point of like a real eye opener for me around how much can be happening for your kids that we're not always aware of, how very small things can be very big things for your child in those moments, even if in hindsight they look back and they're not. They play a really big role in how they start to define themselves, how they start to see themselves. So when we started homeschooling, it wasn't long before I was trying to do all the like, what's the perfect way to homeschool? We're going to do nature walks and we're going to have a nature journal and we're going to do this and you need to look after your body too. And then now let's sit down and do this. I had all these big plans. And the kids very quickly were like, "We don't want to do this." And it was again this tension point, struggle. And then I found Dana Martin, which blew my mind. There was this family, Dana Martin, if you know her, that were living life with no rules. And to be honest, at first I was like, this chick's this chick's crazy. Like really? No. Yes, I can relate to some things, but that letting them eat whatever they want, hell no. Letting them go to bed whenever they want, what is she on? But the more I watched and the more I listened, and the kids were like straight away, yeah, this is the right way to live. And I'm like, okay. I'm very much all in. When I resonate with something, I go deep. I'm talking within a month, I devoured everything I possibly could on that philosophy and I was all in. So we went from me wanting to be very natural and no tech, no sugar, all of that, to suddenly all radical unschooling, freedom. It was hard because there's a process of deschooling in the beginning, free reign with technology, going to bed when you're tired, when you want to. But I also had the aware parenting background in that I was really able to hold space for the emotions that needed to come up and having an understanding of how trauma functions and how to support my kids to come back to homeostasis within their own bodies and find that sweet spot. Yeah, it was a dance between those two philosophies, aware parenting and radical unschooling, and a marriage of those. It was a good 3 years before I did a year-long mentorship with Dana Martin. That's when it really landed in a space of understanding the philosophy beyond it being something that I felt like I had to get right and more something that I learnt to embody. And honestly, now I see radical unschooling as so much more than an educational model. It's a way of life and it really is like a living practice. So for me, following the radical unschooling philosophy, but bringing in that aware parenting aspect of understanding trauma and understanding the way emotion functions, understanding the body from my somatic therapy work, and also marrying that with separating yourself from your child in a sense that you see them for another human, not just a little person or a little version of you that you need to train to be good or to be successful or to have a certain moral value set. It's like, can you actually let them have their own? And that's big work. And to me, that's a spiritual practice. Like, if we can do that with our kids, then we can do that out in the world with everyone else.
This placement also speaks to your creative intelligence and self expression through your love of writing and your desire to find joy, especially through working with women, exploring intimacy, and following what lights you up. All of this ties beautifully into the energy of the fifth house: passion, pleasure, play, romance, and the ways to express and connect back in with self. Which leads to one of your courses, MILFs, 21 Days of Pleasure, bringing sexy back, mothers immersing in loving the fuck out of self. Can you tell us about this course, Vanessa? Because it's so fifth house. It's like the fifth house is about pleasure, joy, romance, fun, and Venus, women.
Yeah, I mean, I think moms especially, it's all about our kids. I think moms can sometimes get very disconnected from their bodies and very exhausted, very depleted, very undernourished on a deeper level. Sometimes even the basic nourishment is very depleted, but that deeper level of being able to connect with the sexual self and their own beauty and their body's sensuality. And so the MILFs was really born from that space. I mean, it's been a long time coming. I've done a lot of work with mums to see that there was that disconnect there. It just brings together all my somatic work and puts it into like a 21-day kind of practice, little bite-sized connection points for 21 days to understand the different erotic essence, erotic aliveness that is always there. It's kind of like a smoldering fire that's always there, that sometimes we feel like it's so far out of reach as mums, especially if we're exhausted or depleted or feel totally, maybe traumatized by our births and not wanting to connect with any kind of sexual experience at all. It's just bringing it back to understanding that it doesn't have to be with a partner. It doesn't have to be so that you can be better at parenting. The whole course was built for mums just to come home to knowing and really feeling and embodying that they have everything they need right now in this moment in their own bodies. It just takes a bit of presence, a bit of time, a bit of guidance to connect back in, to feel, to enhance sensation. So that's what that course was about. Really, yeah. trying to be a bridge for that for mums.
You really have embodied and had experiences in every area of the fifth house. It's been such a big theme for you, which is the first house lord in the fifth. So much energy has gone into that fifth house in so much of what you do. I want to move to your 12th house, which adds a deeply spiritual, intuitive layer to your path. The ruler of the fifth house, Saturn, in ancient astrology, the planet of karma, connects to the 12th, the house of dreams, the unconscious, the spiritual realms, our hidden patterns and past lives. And what makes this even more significant is that Virgo, the sign ruling your 12th house, speaks to the wisdom of the body and healing through embodied awareness and regulating the nervous system. One of the expressions of having the fifth house lord in the 12th is receiving creative inspiration through dreams, divine guidance, and spiritual downloads. The 12th house of sleep, but also of spirit guides, ancestors, and the unseen. You might find that some of your most meaningful creative insights come not just from the outer world, but from within the quiet, the intuitive, and the sacred, but also in times of connection with your body. I know you've been doing a lot of work with your dreams lately. Can you share why this has become such a powerful focus for you right now and what you've been noticing or uncovering in your own life through all this dream work?
I got inspired by Toko Turner. I think that's how you say her name. I've been inspired by previous people like Marion Woodman, Clarissa Pinkola Estes, who all speak about dreams as well. All the Jungian analysts, especially the ones who've taken a kind of feminist approach to some of these teachings and this awareness of the collective unconscious, the unconscious. And, dreams are a direct way in. Just to backtrack a little bit, one of the core themes and the reason why I've always had this passion about women understanding and anyone understanding that they have everything they need right here in their body now. I've been very much about like making sure that we understand that we don't need all these tools and gadgets. Like there's sometimes these tools and gadgets are helpful, sure, but I don't like the idea of us relying on all these external things to help us get wherever it is we're trying to go. So if it's with pleasure, we're always relying on tools and practices to get there, knowing that just you in your body, you have what you need with a little bit of guidance, with a little bit of being able to turn inwards. Sometimes the tools, like some of the yoni ones and things like that, they're great. Of course, they support the process, but we have fingers, we have hands, we really do have everything that we need. And I have that same philosophy when it comes to seeking um, our paths, seeking our truest expression, or seeking our next steps. All these things, like, I love picking cards and I love
Mm.
connecting with you and talking about my astrology. I love delving deep into different things. Like recently, we've been delving deep into the Enneagram of personality. Like all of these things are great. And at the same time, I'm such a big advocate for remembering that all of these tools help point us somewhere, but ultimately they're pointing us back into ourselves. And we always have everything we need within us. So with dreams, it's the same thing. I feel like dreams is our tap in, like it's our connection into the collective unconscious, but also our own personal path to being in the flow of our life's essence, where it's wanting to take us, where we're being asked to move this particular lifetime. So dreams for me kind of tap into that. It's like it's like an uninterrupted remembering, like when we're in our normal conscious state, there's a forgetting that happens. Whereas when you go into the dream world, we can tap back into remembering what we really need, what's really important for us in this moment, what's really alive, what's really true. And the process of just kind of playing with tapping into that and remembering and listening, it's not easy. It's not about like, what does it mean? What does it mean? Give me all the stuff that's underneath, because ultimately we're always repressing something as we go about our day just to function. It's a safety mechanism. There's going to be some things that we maybe push away or that we're not willing to look at. These things come up in our dreams for us to be with and to move with. And the more we can court that, the more we can really be in relationship with that, and the more we will start to get little inklings of understanding about what it's leading us towards, what maybe our next step is. And I love it because it's less about quick fixes. And I'm also, all my work is about really understanding that in this life, all these hacks, like I really hate the term hacks, life hacks, parenting hacks. Firstly, like hack means like just cut shit off, which to me feels brutal and unnecessary. And secondly, I just feel like it's such um a deadening and a diminishing of what life is about. And, I guess this is probably my Scorpio and my love of depth, but like, you know, look at nature as well, the way she moves, the way she grows, the way she expresses. There's a process. Things take time. And I think we're getting so bent on wanting to just cut corners and do things quickly and more, 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 rather than just being with what is. Well, I guess all my work is about just allowing yourself to come back into that essence of what is and really nurture that and find the beauty in that and return to that state of beautiful pleasure and connection that's there always. It's just we're so busy reaching for more.
Remember a psychic reading that I had once, and the lady said to me, because I was having full on dreams at that time, like so vivid, and there was lots of past life energy coming through, and it was like intense, but exciting every time I'd have it. I'd be like, wow, like mind blown. And I've got like diaries full of these dreams that I've written down because you do forget them. But I clearly remember her saying to me, that sometimes we can get all this information in our dreams because we're not allowing the time during the day to sit and just be present. And that's always kind of stuck with me. I'm a big dreamer. I also have placements in the 12th house. In the 12th house, it's the collective as well. It's the collective conscious. So, do you feel like you've ever had any premonitions in your dreams? Like, you don't have to share them, but do you feel like that you have?
Yeah, nothing's coming to mind in this moment, but definitely. There's different qualities to dreams. Sometimes you can tell certain dreams are more like a premonition or a warning, and others are more like what you were just referring to. There's just so much that I haven't given space to process, and it's just like just intensity, just a whole heap of stuff.
So your moon also sits in the 12th house in Virgo, a beautiful and powerful placement for a healer. The moon brings emotional depth and intuition, while Virgo adds groundedness, practicality, and a natural gift for healing. The moon also represents what we need to feel nurtured, safe, and emotionally supported. It speaks to our inner world, our emotional landscape, and I know for you, your spiritual practice, as you've explained throughout this whole podcast, and your deep connection to the body plays a huge role in that. It's through these practices that you nourish your spirit and find a sense of inner peace and wholeness. It's also a big part of the offerings you bring to the world. With the moon in the 12th house, there's often a strong psychic sensitivity. You may feel things deeply and sometimes find it hard to distinguish between your own emotions and those you're picking up from others. It's an incredibly empathetic placement and one that frequently appears in the charts of natural healers. There's also a sense that departed feminine figures, ancestors, or maternal energies may be guiding you from behind the scenes. Virgo is a feminine sign linked with the priestess archetype and brings a sacred devotion to healing and service. And it wasn't until last night when I was thinking about how your fifth house connects to your 12th house, and Saturn is the ruler of your fifth house, which sits in the 12th house. I know that's a lot of astrology jargon. I think of Saturn and, all that Virgo energy. It's like there's this wise grandmother or this elder that's like guiding you from the other side. So, with your moon in Virgo in the 12th house, a placement that blends intuitive sensitivity with grounded embodied wisdom, how do ritual, embodiment, and connection to the unseen support your emotional well being?
My first memory of life is with my dad's mum because we were very close. I would have been under two, sitting on her lap, spinning a gold pendant of the world. That was my first ever memory. And I still remember it now. And I was so close with her, and she died when I was 7. And when I was older, in my party days, I remember coming home once and feeling her behind me, seeing her in me. And I remember saying to my dad, I messaged my dad, he lived overseas, and I said, "Oh, had a bit of a strange experience where I felt Lydia, it's my grandmother, with me, and she's like my guardian angel. She's here with me, supporting me. And he said he had chills, and he was like, I had a dream last week. My mum came and said goodbye to me. She said, "You're okay now. I'm leaving you now, Michael." He was quite young when his mum died, and they'd had a fight beforehand, and it was quite traumatic for him. So he longed after his mum, and it's almost like she was there with him for that period of time. So it was like, "You're okay now. It's time for me to move on to someone else." So she's always definitely felt like she's there. I mean, ritual is like a bridge, isn't it? It's almost like, so we've got our day-to-day here, we've got our dreams and the unconscious on the other side. So you've got what's conscious, what's not conscious, or the subconscious, and that's the kind of collective consciousness dream. And it feels to me like ritual is a bridge between the two. It sits in the middle of both of those. It allows you to connect with that kind of unseen world, but it gives you an action that's very real and very here and very manifest, So yeah, it's ritual for me has definitely been a connecting point.
And what about carrying other people's energies?
That's been something that, again, with age comes more wisdom and an understanding, a deeper rooting into who I am and my edges, and being very aware. I used to see it as that I'm just so super empathetic, but actually I've come to understand that I actually allow, and sometimes with my healing work, when I was doing my neo-tantric work, and also as a somatic therapist, when I was doing body work on people, it's almost like I would run their energy through my body and then them as a healing. And I've had to learn that actually that's so dangerous. It's not that I was consciously trying to do that, but it's just that because there is this openness there and sometimes this lack of boundary around where I end and another starts. But also I've understood now that I'm actually quite an introvert and I need a lot of time alone. Whereas in the past, I tapped more into the extroverted side of myself and pushed myself out there to always be out and amongst people. And then I've realized that actually that's not always healthy for me because I need time to really just be in my own energy.
12th house of retreat and isolation and being in your creativity and in your body, retreating from the world. It's what you need to feel emotionally nurtured. What stands out so clearly in your life is your deep connection to nature and its rhythms. You honor not only the menstrual cycles of women, so beautifully linked to the moon and a prominent Pluto in your chart, but also the cycles of the earth and the changing seasons. It's as if nature speaks to you intuitively and you listen. This connection is such a powerful expression of your Virgo moon and the channeled wisdom of the 12th house. So, this brings me to your latest creation, Mistress of Flow, which ties in beautifully with this energy. What is it? How did it come to be? And what has it taught you about being in a relationship with the body, the cycles, and your creativity?
Yeah, I mean, it's a new creation, but it's an old creation. When I transitioned onto online work, I created a little guidebook called The Crimson Codes, and it was about understanding your menstrual cycle, basically understanding the patterns, how it connects to nature, how as feminine beings with wombs, we're very connected to that cyclic spin. We have an inbuilt moon cycle, which also the moon cycle is a very similar spin to the seasonal wheel cycle, right? And yeah, it was so profound. It was such a profound practice in my life of understanding myself better, understanding what I needed at different times of my cycle. Writing that book was really, really supportive in just kind of bringing all of that wisdom that I'd been practicing and learning into a form that I could gift to others, that others could take from and learn more about themselves. And I got such good response from that particular guidebook. I've got a beautiful friend, psychotherapist, who started using it within her practice to support her. And then I had a friend who's a librarian, and she complimented me on how well it was written. So there was just all these little things that just made me feel so good about this first little creation that I'd put out in the world. But because it was the first one, and because I love beauty, and because I'm a bit of a perfectionist with all the Virgo energy, I got better at making things more beautiful, creating things that looked in an aesthetic that I liked online. And I would look back at that book and go, God, I need to update this book. Plus, I wrote a second book called The Descent, which was meant to be a follow-on from the Crimson Codes, which went more deeply into the archetypal energies of each phase of our cycles and what they represent, and trying to kind of give you more of an embodied experience. Not that you can take the embodiment out of a cyclic wisdom book, because I mean, it's connecting with your menstrual cycle, but I wanted both archetypal and energetic exploration, but that was also embodied in how you explore it. So I was trying to marry both of those two together. The Descent had the aesthetics that I liked. So then it took another like 5 years before I married the two, put them in one book called The Mistress of Flow, and did a video presentation where I just kind of spoke about all the different layers to what's in the book, essentially. And now I'm super proud of it. I created a new map, which is a beautiful map of the cyclic wheel that shows you really clearly how we've got the outer cyclic wheel being the seasons and the different sub-art points, like the solstices, the equinoxes. Then you've got the moon cycle, and then inside you've got your internal inner cycles of inner summer, inner winter, inner autumn, inner spring. It just helps to kind of see how each of these relate. Full moon, dark moon, bleeding, ovulating, they all connect so beautifully, and it helps you understand what you might need in each of these different phases. And as a caveat to that, what I learned while I was rewriting it and putting it together, because I'm not cycling anymore, I went through early menopause, I realized that we actually still cycle through these phases as a natural process of creation. Whether you're bleeding or not bleeding, there is inherent in all of us, specifically those attuned to the feminine principle. When we're connecting with the feminine principle, there is this natural rhythm, this natural cyclic spin that happens that is very reflected in the moon, in the seasons, and just in how we ourselves internally fluctuate through these different kinds of feeling states and embodied states within us, and psychological states too, actually. When we start to follow that pattern, it helps us to understand how creativity works too. And when we get stuck in a point in the creative cycle, like so for me, with my constant starting of things and maybe able to carry through, I can look at the point on the wheel where I get stuck to just push me forward to continue that cycle to completion.
And I have loved this in my own creative process because I will like on a voice recording with Vanessa whenever I've got something going on, and she's like, right, I think you're in this point in the map. It's so helpful to keep going, to be able to push through and keep going with whatever you're creating in the world.
And to know when it's time to like back off and stop and actually just rest, because sometimes we try and push when we're meant to be actually like stopping and surrendering and just letting things be for a while and giving some breathing space. But yeah, both those.
That has helped so much. She's like, you might just need to stop for a while. And normally you stop, and then a day or two later, inspiration sparks again. It's an amazing map to follow.
And it's so personal, which is what I love too. In all my work, and this is why I love radical unschooling so much, because it is so personal. It can look different in every single house because it's really about tuning into the essence of the human in front of you and allowing them to trust their innate movement, their innate flow, their innate cycle. So my cyclic spin, even though there's a wheel to help you connect with the energies, is going to look very different to say Tara's or to someone else's, because we each have that innate unique rhythm. So I feel like my work especially is always about like just peeling back all these layers that have kind of covered ourselves from ourselves. It's like we're hidden from ourselves.
I definitely am with the 12th house planets, and you would have felt that yourself as well with all the Virgo and the planets in the 12th house. It can dissolve things. There can be a loss of identity, especially with the sun in the 12th house. And for you, the moon in the 12th house, loss of your own emotions, picking up on others' emotions and what's mine and what's others. Your sun sits in the sign of Capricorn. The sun represents our identity, our sense of purpose, and often speaks to our career and the way we shine in the world. Capricorn is symbolized by the sea goat, the upper half representing the determined mountain goat, striving for success, mastery, and achievement in the material world. But the lower half, the fishtail, speaks to emotional, spiritual, and subconscious depths. This gives Capricorn a hidden connection to ancient wisdom, intuition, and the unseen realms, something not always obvious on the surface. True mastery for Capricorn doesn't just come from success in the outer world, but from balancing that with inner growth and emotional depth. Capricorn often gets the reputation of being serious, detached, and overly traditional. And yes, that can show up. But in my experience, I've also seen many deeply emotionally connected women with strong Capricorn placements. For you, your sun sits in the fourth house, the house of ancestors, lineage, family, and the deep emotional foundations that shape us. It feels so fitting that you've poured so much energy and hard work into nurturing your connection with family and working with the cycles. The sun also represents how we shine in the world, and you truly shine in a way that supports families and holds space for deep emotional needs. There's a quiet strength in the wisdom you carry, especially when it comes to nature, mothering, and the sacred work of tending to home and hearth. With your Capricorn sun in the fourth, a placement that blends purpose, responsibility, and emotional depth, do you feel a sense of calling when it comes to family, ancestry, or tending to the emotional roots of others?
Yeah, 100% yes. And I think that description of Capricorn about the bottom part was a game changer for me, because the Capricorn that we normally hear about is just the upper aspect. When I heard that, I felt much more connected to Capricorn. I was like, finally, that makes sense. Like, that's the depths that I'm trying to go to rather than the heights. So I think the difference is there's a depth that we're aiming to get to as a sea goat, as opposed to the height that the mountain goat is trying to get to. So yeah, just a different take, but definitely I resonate with that.
The fourth house is the lowest point in the chart. It's what's hidden, it's our emotional depth. So that wisdom that you carry, like bodying that, the bottom half, the fishtail of the goat, being able to tap into that. But also, again, the fourth house is ancestors. So that grandmother energy is so strong. Since you're a writer, I have to speak about your Mercury placement in Capricorn. In the fourth house, Mercury is the planet of communication, writing, and storytelling. And with it sitting in the fourth house, it's no surprise that your writing explores themes of home, family, the hearth, women's cycles, nature's rhythms, and emotional roots, all classic fourth house territory. While the sign of Capricorn brings a grounded, earthy, wise quality to how you express those themes, plus with Mercury ruling Virgo, the 12th house energy in your chart, there's a deep thread of embodiment, healing, and intuitive wisdom running through your work. So, can you tell us all about your writing practice and what you're currently working on?
Leaning into the Capricorn's been such a late blooming. Even the writing, it came later. So I only really got into the writing when I wrote that first book, The Crimson Codes, and when I started showing up online writing and realizing I was getting a really good response from people, and it was like channeling, like things were coming through and I was getting inspired ideas and I was just writing, and the more I wrote, the better I got at writing, and people kind of were responding to the writing, really saying, wow, you're really speaking, you're stirring something in me when you write. So when I was in school, English was like my worst subject. I was terrible at English. And my mum used to always be so confused by it because she's an immigrant and she learned English and was better at English than I was as a second language. And she was like, how can you be bad at English? It's your first language. And I was like, I don't know, I'm not good at it.
Having Mercury in Capricorn can slow down your thinking and learning processes, making it take longer to master Mercury type things. So you weren't bad at English, you just needed the time and space to really understand it. But once you truly get it, you hold on to that information. Capricorn energy is about holding on, and Mercury is how we learn and think. So with this combo, you'd actually have the ability to retain and have an amazing memory.
There was no way that I thought I would be a good writer. That hasn't come till later. And now, as I'm getting older, at the moment specifically, really honing in on focusing on the writing. I've got 3 books that I'm trying to write and really just dedicating the space to my writing. I've got a Substack space that, again, it's all moving towards really, really mastering this sense of my writing capacity and bringing all the wisdom that I've learned from all these different things and upheavals and deaths and rebirths and working one-on-one with people, really bringing it through in my writing as I go forward. I still do have some courses and things online and work one-to-one with some people, but I'm really trying to hone most of that wisdom into just being in a consistent writing practice and developing that into the books that I'm writing for people.
Mercury ruled Virgo, which is your 12th house. It's almost like you had to go through all of these spiritual experiences and practices and embodiment and gather all that knowledge to bring this information through in your writing. And it's come later in life, as Capricorn can do, because you have to go through the experiences and gain the wisdom and the knowledge. There'd be a lot of channeled information coming through. Saturn in your 12th house can be like karma. Saturn is the planet of karma, so it's like you have to bring it through in this life, this information. It's a karmic destiny or something. I don't
Yeah.
know, does that make sense?
Uh,
So I think we'll wrap it up there for today. It's been such a rich and meaningful conversation, and I'm really grateful for how openly you've shared your chart and your life experiences with us. Before we go, can you let everyone know where they can find you on socials or how they can support the amazing work you're doing in the world?
You can find me on a Beacon site, beacons.ai/weavinghearth. My Instagram is weavinghearth. And then I have a Substack space as well, just Vanessa Beachamp on Substack, I'm pretty sure. My publication on Substack is Unlearning, Undoing, Unbecoming. But if you just look for Vanessa Beachamp Substack, I think that's what it comes under. I'm still figuring Substack out.
As we've learnt today, Vanessa is a Libra rising with Pluto in the first, and her journey has been nothing short of transformative. At times it's been chaotic and intense, marked by powerful rebirths and fresh new starts. With Venus, her chart ruler, sitting in Aquarius in the 5th house, Vanessa spent her early years pushing boundaries and embracing her inner rebel. She worked in the fashion industry before discovering radical unschooling as a life philosophy, a reflection of Aquarius in the house of children, doing things differently. Her 12th house is rich with planetary energy, suggesting she would find deep meaning in faraway places, and she did. Vanessa travelled the world and uncovered new layers of herself through spiritual practice, tantric exploration, and somatic healing, all deep 12th house themes. When she returned home, she met her husband and began a family, but found herself torn between two worlds: the high energy, fashion fueled party scene and the grounded spiritual work of yoga and therapy. After a series of deep Pluto experiences, it was her discovery of how trauma manifests in children and her dive into aware parenting and eventually radical unschooling that shaped the life she now lives. Her Capricorn Sun has taken time to fully land, but she's now beginning to embody the grounded wisdom and quiet mastery of that energy, especially through her writing. And with her moon in Virgo in the 12th house, alongside several other planets, Vanessa is deeply intuitive, sensitive, and empathetic. Someone who thrives when she has the space to retreat, reflect, and reconnect. And of course, with Libra rising and Pluto in her first, she's a natural therapist and counsellor. Someone who walks with others through the fire, holding space with compassion, depth, and a quiet power. If you'd like to follow more of Vanessa's work, you'll find all the links in the show notes. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. As you've heard here today, the natal chart holds so many possibilities, and today's offered just a glimpse into how some of the energies have shown up in Vanessa's life. We're so much more than just our sun sign. It's the interplay of all the placements that reveal the full story. And if something doesn't quite resonate, it might be because another part of your chart is speaking louder. That's why understanding your whole chart matters. It's layered, dynamic, and uniquely yours. If you're feeling called to explore your own birth chart, head over to my website at tarawatersastrology.com to book a reading. I'd love to journey through the stars with you and help uncover your path, purpose, and potential through astrology.